Hello everyone and welcome to Low Rent Rick Scale Modelling, and this is my build of the 135 scale British Special Air Service Jeep from Tamiya. This is following on from the Pink Panther build that I did a couple of months ago. That video is linked below in the description. Before we get going, please consider subscribing to my channel. It's completely free, it doesn't cost you anything, and it makes me really happy and helps the channel to grow. So let's get on with the build. Inside the box is what you'd expect. You get a tips and tricks sheet and instructions into languages. What's your thoughts on the Tamiya instructions? I kind of like them. They seem quite clear to me. I could do with the instructions in colour. That's always helpful. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm going to start this build by getting the figures done first. Now the figures have got quite a seam running around them. And given my low level of experience in model building, this is the first time I'll really be doing the 135 scale figures, so they look quite detailed. It's something I'm quite looking forward to, but there's a lot of work to do to get them ready. So I'm going to sand them all back first, get rid of any visible seams. So when I'm finally ready to paint them up, once they're all glued together, I'm going to mount them. So I'm going to use a couple of needles that I'm going to heat and then pierce into the back side, and then put them onto a blob of blue tack. That's just to keep them steady and get them able to be moved around easily. The painting itself, I'm going to do a base coat. So with the figures, I think my method is to paint them up in the largest colour first. So the colour that you're going to put down most, and this is just an undercoat colour. So as you can see here, I'm using a yellow ochre, the Revell, and as the video progresses, because it's just sped up, in the coffee lid, there you can see the colour starts to get darker and darker as it sits, and that's what happens with this colour. It does darken over time, but this is just a base coat acting as more of a colour primer really. For the skin tone, I'm going to use Vallejo model colour, the dark flesh. I've always found that colour a little bit too yellow, but it's great as an undercoat, as a primer for flesh colour, and it does grow darker as the paint dries off. But over the top of that, I'm going to put a very thin wash, ironically enough, of the UK Desert Pink, and the combination of the two colours does give quite a good flesh response. The dish dash is going to be done in Tamiya white. And then later on I'm going to go around the edge and do the roping in black. It's quite daunting because I can barely see the rope, but I'll get to that in a moment. So to do the black roping, I'm actually using one of the brushes that comes free with an Airfix starter kit, because actually the tips of these brushes is fantastic for this fine detail work. Now the figures are done, moving on to the main construction, and the eagle-eyed of you will notice that the base plastic has changed colour. What I've actually done is I airbrushed over as a primer with Unblock acrylic number 63, which is a really sandy colour. But at that time I accidentally knocked the settings on my camera, and it's because it's one of those ones with a zoom and a digital zoom, it actually just zoomed in on the back of my head, and I got an hour of me spray painting, but you couldn't see any of that. All you could see is how thin my hair's getting. So apologies for that, but it was all given just a base coating of that Unblock 63 before I started the main construction. Those Unblock dropper bottles of acrylic paint are quite good, but I found that they need quite a lot of thinning down before you use them through an airbrush. It does just say use straight from the bottle. Maybe it's because the bottle's got a little bit of age in it, but I had to water it down to maybe 50-60% to get it to flow correctly. Let me know in the comments if your experience is different. It might just be this bottle, because I think it did run okay the first time I used it. Pretty standard method for me. Any of the bits that are black, any small fiddly bits that now need like lots of one colour, I'll just do them on the sprue to give them a first coat up. It's one of the methods I use all the time. I find it quite helpful, and then once you've taken them off and you sand away the bits, they get the second coat, then it ties it in quite nicely. also going to paint the undercarriage and chassis parts in the black, and after I've got them all painted in, so I'm going to do sort of the engine block, the main parts of the chassis and suspension, all in the black, and once that's dried off I'm going to wash over them. So I'm going to put a very thin layer of ochre and water over the top of these parts, and when you see the effect, they actually do look really, really good. They kind of look like a sandy steel effect underneath. That was completely by accident, it's just an experiment. I think it came out really well. So that's the ochre there, that's one of the Revell colours that I've got left over, which is going to be the main top coat over the main colour of the body of the Jeep, but it's also going to be used as a wash as well for weathering. I drifted off a little bit off centre here, but as you see I'm putting that wash over the black now, and it actually is already looking really good. I'll also be using this wash over the rubber of the tyres once they'd have a little touch up with the black, and it really does give a great effect. All these silver parts, the very few silver parts, I'm going to be using for the first time Tamiya colour acrylic paint, the X11 Chrome Silver. And if you've never used this paint before, let me tell you, it's a breath of fresh air. Absolutely fantastic coverage, and the effect really is a shiny chrome silver. I don't know whether it goes through the airbrush very well. If any of you used this this sort of metallic or the chrome silver, the X11 through an airbrush, let me know how you got on, because I'd like to experiment with it and see what it's like. The fit of this kit is absolutely fantastic, no issues at all. It fits together really, really well. I have been quite disciplined and dry fit everything before I try gluing it, but the fit is amazing. So I'm just going to stick it all together now and do a few touch-ups before I get on with the main parts of the accessories that need to go with it. While I'm doing the touch-up on the black before I weather the tyres, once I spin the Jeep over, you get to see the effect of the ochre wash over the black on the chassis parts, engine and suspension, and I think you'll agree it actually really is quite a good effect. I'm really pleased with how that's turned out. Now I'm going to paint all the accessories. I don't know which of them I'm going to use, so I'm just going to paint them all, so I've got the option to drop them in. So over the base coat I'm going to go over with a thin green wash. Now my reasoning behind this is, in my experience, a lot of these things were painted quite hastily in real life, and a lot of the stuff started out as green, so I just like to see sort of a really weathered green effect. Now conversely, as it's going on as an overcoat, not as an undercoat, when I wash over it, it will look like they've sort of washed out a little bit and they're getting a bit of use to get some detail in. And on the straps I'm going to go with sort of a saddle leather brown, but this may look counterintuitive doing it this way, but it's, you know, it's something I'm trying out and I think it'll look quite good. It always strikes me at this stage of the build just how clean and neat and uniform the models look before I go a bit mental with the weathering. But the weathering is something that I'm learning, and it's something I really enjoy. I think I'm going to try and do some pristine models as I get my skills up and my experience level up, but it always makes me smile at this point just how neat and brand new these things look before I go splashing about some black wash and some weathering. using the Vallejo saddle brown on all the straps, which in my mind are made of leather. I know these things will probably be cammed up with the rest of it, but when they're making the model, I like little parts of it just to pull the eye away. So while the colours might not be quite realistic, they do make for a better model in my opinion. It's too much to have it too uniform and to over sort of camo it up. It's not why I'm doing it. So while it's not really that accurate, I really like to add these dashes of colour left, right and centre on the models. I mean, what's your thoughts on it? I know sometimes that I'll do things like on certain aircraft I'll add a red nose, for example, on the spinner, and it's just something just to pull the eye away, a little focal point on the model. So now I'm going to move on to getting the Jeep actually loaded up with all the accessories, jerry cans and all that sort of thing. Now what I've done is I've just painted everything like I'm going to use it all, but I don't think it'll all fit. I don't know if you're the same as me, but I tend to keep all of these bits in a big box, all of these spares and extras that you get with each kit. I pile them all into the box, and then sometimes when I do a diorama or something, I've got a little bit to play around with and have an addition to. So it's a good thing to do to get them all out. Do you do the same? Let me know in the comments. It's worth mentioning here that I popped for a bit of lunch and left the lid off my Revell Contacta, so I made a little video which I'll link in the description, which just shows in a little bit more detail than that how to unblock it with the lighter. It's a really quick and easy method, and it works really well. Saves you having to throw these things in the bin, which I've done before, so please do check that video out. Now all the accessories I'm going to glue up, file, sand, get them all ready. It's a lot of work, but they will go in the spares bin, and then we'll see what actually fits onto the back of the Jeep. I'm going to follow the loaded suggestion on the instructions quite closely because I think it looks really good. There's a lot of fuel jerry cans to go on. The ones that are going on the back here, they'll all need gluing together individually, but it looks better than them being in a block, I think, than if you've got them all joined together, because even the eye is taken to where they're joined. I think individually it just adds that little bit of extra realism. As you can see, they're looking a bit messy because they're looking a bit weathered up. They've still got a few coats to go over them to make them look even more realistic. But we'll just see how much of this kit actually fits in the back and how much of it ends up in the spares box. Before fitting the figures, now we've got all the loading done and all the accessories glued on, I'm going to go over the entire thing with an extremely thin black wash. Now I use this an awful lot, so it's very, very thin, so you do it to your eye really, but you want sort of 10% pigment to 90% water. And once you start laying it down over the model, what it will start to do is it'll start to pull out all those little details and all the contours and all the shapes that are washed out by the weathering. So putting another layer over the top of the tyres here and then adding plenty of water to wash it away will really bring the weathering together and make it look really detailed. The black wash is something quite special that I use on almost all of the models. For this one specifically, I'm not going to varnish, so I usually use Vallejo matte varnish over the top of the models, but even with a matte varnish you get a little bit of a shine, and I think for this, for the desert look, I'm going to use no varnish at all and just leave it with that really fine matte sandy coat. Now I'm going to fit the figures, fit the troopers. One of the dangers of pre-building and painting the figures before they go on the model, so they go on at the end, is the limb position. So the arms are set in a position where I think they're going to be. It does actually say in the instructions to glue the steering wheel to the driver before he goes in, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually alter the angle of the limbs and arms before I put him in. The good thing about the Contacta glue is even when set, if you apply quite a bit of pressure you can still move them around and reset them, but it's something to watch out for if you're going to build it in this way. Once the armaments go on, the gunner sitting in the right hand seat is going to need a little bit of adjustment, so that just so that his hand and palm rests on the butt of the machine gun. This is actually the fiddliest part of the entire build, assembling the double Vickers machine guns at the front. It's quite a delicate little task, one which my sausagey fingers don't get on with very well. So it is a little bit finicky, but well worth the effect when you finally get it done. It will have a couple of cross members across it to steady it up, but that'll need to leave to set before you mess with it too much, which I didn't do, and I kept popping them off. So once you've got them on, you've got it lined up and you've got the cross members in, get it glued on. I would probably, looking back, use super glue rather than Contacta on this bit to get them fixed and firm, but you live and learn, don't you? And there we have it complete. An extremely enjoyable kit to build, especially for under 12 quid. There's a link to get your own in the description. I really enjoyed this one, can't recommend it enough. Thank you for watching and joining me to the end of the video. You guys really keep me going, and it makes it worth doing. Please do consider subscribing, leave any likes or comments, or ask any questions in the comments, and I'll try to get back to every single one. Thank you again for joining me. My next build is probably going to be another Tamiya, probably the Panther Kampfwagen 4, because I love these kits so much. Thank you so much for joining me. See me in the next video. Bye bye.